My name's Bruno Blum. I'm from Paris, France, but I've lived in England a lot. I've lived in Jamaica. I've traveled to the USA, to Africa a lot. Where I did many things concerning music writing, and I'm also a cartoonist, illustrator, fine arts artist. So I started off as a cartoonist, doing comics, and I moved to England when I was a teenager at an early age. I was part of the punk rock movement, where I met the first vegetarians I met in my life. And they were people like Joe Strummer, who was the lead singer in The Clash, people like Chrissie Hynde, who was the lead singer of The Pretenders, and she was a friend of mine, and people like Peter Tosh or Bob Marley. You know, I interviewed all these people, and I was part of the punk and reggae movement in England at a very young age, and I was writing about this in the music press, publishing my drawings and my photography as well. I'm also a musician. I had a punk group there, and I'm still doing a lot of music right now. I'm working on a major Serge Gainsbourg production album. I've done 3 of his albums, and I'm doing a 4th one, although he's dead, you know, but I'm doing that. We're doing remixes of his reggae recordings. I'm also singing songs, writing songs. I've in fact written a few songs about vegetarianism. Du cœur au ventre, mais pas une carnivore, de peur qu'elle me dévore, j'aime pas les andouilles. And published some, you know. I've done several albums, and I've produced music for other artists, as well as writing about music history. I have a university degree in musicology, and I'm a specialist in Caribbean music and American music, okay? But in my personal life, I've been a vegetarian ever since I was 20 years old or so. In the late 70s, I was a teenager, and I was in the rock and roll lifestyle, you know. We took a lot of drugs, we tried everything, we played loud rock and roll music, and I was also doing music journalism a lot. So I met a lot of really cool people. One of them who really influenced me a lot in my life is Chrissie Hynde, the lead singer of The Pretenders. The Pretenders were a fantastic band, and she has a very strong personality. And one day she told me that I shouldn't eat animals anymore, that it was bad for the environment, that it was bad for me, and of course it was bad for the animals. And I was always an animal-loving guy, you know. I always loved animals, which of course prepared me for becoming, you know, some sort of jihadist of, you know, it's as if it's wrong to like animals, you know, and to care about them. So that's the kind of reception I get when, a lot of the time when I tell people I'm a vegetarian. It's like I'm wrong to be against violence, you know. And so Chrissie put this very clearly to me, and she convinced me to become a vegetarian. And after a few weeks, after thinking it over and eating a really bad ossobuco, I decided I didn't need that crap, and that I wanted to eat good food. That was how I started my path, you know, on a journey to better food, and, you know, and to more caring food. And today I've been a vegan for about 4 or 5 years now, and it's really a fascinating attitude towards life. It really is.
Et je suis parti à fond. Et Clémentine m'a dit, mon pauvre chou, t'es dans les choux. Alors c'est vous qui chantez ça. Tes salades, ça me rend malade.
I used to be a drug addict, you know. I used to take a lot of drugs, and I was smoking a lot of hash, especially, as well as drinking, and I tried every drug under the sun, you know. And I find that if you look at it seriously, and you see that eating animals, I don't call it meat, you know, to me it's animals. Eating animals is the most killing addiction there is, you know. Heart disease, blood disease, arterial diseases, that kills most of the people, die of that, you know. So eating animals, considering that we are like gorillas or bonobos or chimpanzees or orangutans, we are primates, and we are obviously built to be eating fruit and not at all omnivorous, which is what most people think. And it hurts them when I tell them this. They think I'm crazy to say that. But I mean, look at gorillas. You know, we have 99.8% of our DNA in common with them. We are not designed to eat animals, and so it's killing a lot of people. You know, it's plain to see. And this is a really disturbing fact for a lot of people. But to me, it's the basis of understanding that Yes, eating animals is an addiction. It's just maybe the most vulgar addiction, the most violent one, and the most killing one, you know. Which of course doesn't go easily when you say this on French TV, you know, because they don't like to hear that. France is the country of steaks.
Ouais, c'était le poulet aux amandes avec toute sa bande. Mon pauvre chou, elle m'a dit, t'es vraiment dans les choux.
I'm a music historian, and I don't think that music does have the same impact as it used to have, say 50 years ago, you know, because there's so much going on now that music cannot be as important as it was. I mean, culturally, okay? But yes, it does have an importance, and certainly it was an important thing for me to understand that some of my teenage heroes, such as Peter Tosh or Bob Marley or Joe Strummer or Chrissy Hynde, and many others, on the music scene were actually vegetarians. I met Lenny Kravitz a few times and he told me he was a vegetarian. People like that, it was really interesting to see that because I look up to them, you know. I think, oh, these are cool people. They're really doing great music and I want to be like them, you know. And the first thing you want to do to be like them is to stop eating animals. They became role models to me. And we don't have many of these in France. And we have a couple maybe, but it's not really working the way it is in England, where it's completely overwhelming, you know. Most of the young singers, they will say it openly that they don't want to eat animals and that this is what they like better. And so France is really behind, you know, compared to England and Scandinavia and USA or Germany or elsewhere. It was important for me to realize that people like Chrissy Hynde of the Pretenders, Peter Tosh, the reggae singer, Bob Marley, or Joe Strummer of The Clash, and in fact I was hanging out with The Clash recently and I realized that Mick Jones, who plays the guitar, you know, he didn't need meat at all. He was maybe having a little fish, you know. And I know these guys, like a lot of musicians in England, are really going veggie, you know. It's like a general movement on the music scene in England. I look up at to these people, you know. I think I want to be like them a little, you know, and so it was important for me to realize that. And it's not just like eating boiled carrots. That's not what it's about. It's about great food and great, what we call here in France, gastronomy. It's about the real deal, you know, the real thing. It's about reality. It's about not living in the Middle Ages anymore. I always compare the abolition of meat to the abolition of slavery. It's a thing that is in the mind of people. Only 100 years ago, a lot of people in Europe used to think that black people were like animals, you know, and therefore you could use them. And the same with women, and you know, it's just a thing in the mind. But if you look at the facts, of course it's a disgusting thing to do and you don't need that, and it's bad for you and it's bad for them and it's bad for everything, you know. So this is going to change. I was always into music culture, you know. I loved rock and roll from a very early age. In fact, I did a lot of things at a very early age, like speaking English, although I'm French, like drawing, like playing music. I started really early. I'm self-taught in nearly everything I do. When I want to learn something, I decide I do it, and I do it myself alone, without any teachers or with little help. So I moved to England at a very early age, where I became a music journalist as well as a musician and a cartoonist. Right now I'm writing a book about veganism that is going to tell my story of how I did it. Of course, a lot of information is going to come through my story, but the frame of the story, the frame of the book, which is what the publisher wanted, is just my story. And so living in England when I was a teenager helped me to accept vegetarianism through the singer from the group The Pretenders. She talked to me, you know, and it was just an obvious thing to do. Maybe if I had lived in France at the time, this would never happened, you know. It was a very British thing. But I think that the French, being so much into the food, is such a national emblem of France, you know. When we are going to switch to French vegan food here, it's going to be the best in the world, man. So you better watch out, you Italians. The publisher for this book is a publisher that deals in well-being of the body and soul. You know, they publish books about shamans and healers and people who will do you good, you know, and will teach you spiritual things. You know, there are the best publisher in this field in France, and they asked me to do that book because that's what it's about. It's about veganism is about doing yourself good. You know, that's it. It's just something that's going to be all over the 21st century. It's bound to be, and that book has to be written for me in a very funny way, you know, because it's very funny, you know, to be in a society where people tell you things like I'm a radical, you know, punk, radical extremist. They tell you that. And they're the ones killing. I'm the radical extremist. They're super fucking radical extremists. Of course they are. You have to be to kill, not even thinking about what you're doing, man. I mean, how absurd is this? So, you know, I'm in an absurd situation, and I like to show that. I'm just switching it around and putting it in a way where the absurdity of life is a pretty obvious thing. Like I really like the film by Roberto Benigni. You know, what is it called? Life is Beautiful or something? La vita bella. La vita bella. La vie est belle. Fantastic film, you know, it's like, it's so ironic, you know, and to be a vegan for me is a very ironic situation because I'm constantly surrounded by people that are very ignorant, really. So that's why I'm trying to, you know, like I do all the time with music history, I just try to give some facts through a funny, divertente way.
Well, it's a hip hop, the hibbit to the hip hop. You don't stop the rockin' to the bad man boogie. Say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogity beat. Au revoir.